Business advice from a law firm owner with a MBA with Devin Miller, episode 39. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the firm differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Profit with Law. I am your host, Moshe Amsel, and today is another bonus episode with a wonderful guest, and I hope that you guys are enjoying the guests that I'm bringing on, because I have been enjoying these interviews and learning so much about other people and their journey and the great information that they're sharing with us. Today is no exception. I have a fellow law firm owner here. Same people who are listening to this podcast. This person is a law firm owner just like you, and his name is Devin Miller. Devin is the owner of Miller IP Law in Morgan, Utah, which is north of Salt Lake City, and he's also the owner of Mountain Green Engineering, which is a product development and prototyping company. Devin is a perpetual learner with 4 degrees in electrical engineering, Mandarin Chinese, Masters of Business Administration, an MBA, and law, a JD. Devin strives to have a well-balanced understanding of the business world. While he earned his law degree and MBA degrees, Devin started a startup that has grown into a multi-million-dollar health device company. Devin now simultaneously runs a product development and prototyping firm and a law firm. Devin is also a devoted husband and father of 4 young children. What's interesting is that I made a connection with Devin on how we are connected with each other on the podcast, which is kind of neat. So stay tuned to listen for that. What I didn't realize is that he's got 4 young kids, and I would have liked to talk to him a little bit about that because I am a father myself with young children, and it's quite a journey to be a business owner and a parent, and that's something that we did not talk about. So I had mentioned to him that I'd like to have him back as a guest, and that'll just be another thing that I'd like to see us talk about when I bring him back in the future. So this is probably one of my favorite interviews because Devin is just a captivating individual who has done so much with his business career. And as a lawyer and a law firm owner, he's demonstrated that it does not need to be exclusively law. There's a lot of options out there as to how you use your skills and expertise. And Devin is a shining example of some of the things that are possible. We delve into some sales and marketing questions. We delve into some questions around general operations of the firm. There's definitely areas that I would like to cover the next time. We just simply ran out of time. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode with Devin. And at the end, he shares his contact information. So if anything that he shared resonates with you, you want to know more about it, feel free to bother him. He's been kind enough to share not just his email address, but also his phone number. And obviously, if you have any clients with IP needs that you can send his way, I'm a big supporter of our guests being promoted on this podcast. So I'd love to see him get some business out of being here, even though most likely the people listening to this don't necessarily have those needs themselves. But you might have clients with those needs, and potentially you can send some business his way. So without further ado, I'm going to queue up that interview, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did enjoy performing the interview. So here you go. Devin, welcome to the show.
Why, thank you. Always good to be on.
So you have quite the eclectic background, and why don't you fill us in and tell us a little bit about your journey, how you arrived at where you are today, so that everyone can kind of get to know who you are before we jump into this.
My pleasure. Sure. Yeah, I do have a bit of an eclectic background. Probably got more degrees than I needed, or probably should have got. But I enjoyed the whole journey along the way, as well as certainly after school. So maybe I can start. Background is went to Brigham Young University out here in Salt Lake City, or Provo, Utah, and got a double E degree, or electrical engineering degree, as well as a Mandarin Chinese degree. So I kind of hit both of those. I lived in Taiwan for a couple of years and learned the language there. So when I came back from Taiwan, I decided to add that on as a second major while I was at BYU. After that, then I kind of had a split, or a kind of a split desire. I enjoyed business and business related things in the entrepreneurial aspect, and also had a desire to go into law, to more in particular intellectual property, so patents and trademarks and other things. So as I was kind of making that decision, or deciding where I wanted to go for graduate school, I looked for schools that I could do both an MBA, or Master's of Business Administration, as well as law degrees. So I could do those in parallel at the same time. And that took me out to Cleveland, Ohio, to Case Western Reserve University, that offered that as a joint program. So I ended up doing that for the next 4 years and going through and getting both an MBA as well as a law degree. Kind of in the middle of all of that, if I wasn't already busy enough, and in addition to, I had a couple kids with, my wife had a couple of kids along the way while I was in school. I also added on there that entered into a business competition while I was as part of the MBA program, and also with the law program, to where I could you could enter in your own business idea in competition, and you had a few other people along with me that we formed a team of different people in different aspects or different degrees. So you had a design person, you had a engineer, a materials engineer, you had a couple other people and myself on the team, and we entered into the business competition. First year we did it with kind of a deodorizer type thing for gym bags, and then the second year we entered in with the same team and did for hydration monitoring for kind of wearables. And this was back in the day before wearables had become exciting, and so you didn't have the Fitbits out there yet, you didn't have the Apple Watches or anything else yet, and it was really just very early on hitting its peak. But we thought it'd be cool for athletes and other people to be able to do hydration monitoring. So kind of in the middle of that, we entered that competition, did well, placed second. I bought out all of my partners, because I was at that time, at the end of that year, was looking to graduate from law school as well as MBA school. So bought those all out, and then kind of went into continuing both of my desires, continue to develop that business on the side while doing a full-time law practice. Then I had kind of went through a couple different firms, went a smaller boutique law firm, and then hit a larger law firm, kind of an AM Law Top 100 law firm. Did those for several years, kind of all in the background, developing and doing some of my own projects and own business, developing what was the originations of that hydration monitoring business while I was still doing a full-time law practice. So that kind of takes me maybe in a short fashion up to where I am today, where now I've transitioned or made the leap and am doing my own law firm. So I do Miller IP Law, where I service and really focus on the small startups, the small businesses, helping out them understanding both what intellectual property is, or what patents and trademarks are, as well as why they may need them or why they make sense. And so that's kind of on the law perspective. But then intermingled with that, I also, as you mentioned, do mountain green engineering, which is kind of the flip side of the coin of helping them also with some product development, some prototyping, do everything from electrical engineering to software. We have people on staff that do everything from 3D printing, software development, double E, do a lot of that prototyping. So that's kind of, I end up hitting the mix. And for me, it's kind of has a good split, because I get to offer them both helping businesses on the business side, having gone through the startup, and also on the law firm kind of gives me ability to mix in advice so that you can get both the legal perspective as well as the business perspective. So that was probably a much longer intro than you were looking for, but that kind of is where all the eclectic nature and where everything takes me from the start of my education to kind of today in an overview fashion.
So actually, it was perfect. I'm looking for everyone to get a pretty good idea of who you are, what you do, and how you got there. And you did a really good job of doing that. It felt forever for you, but it probably was only about 5 minutes long. So really, really interesting story and background. One little nugget that I'll share with you and our listeners is you spent some time in Cleveland, Ohio, and that is where I was born. So I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. Didn't stick around very long. I was about a year old when my parents moved from there, and I grew up primarily in Rockland County, New York, where I currently reside. But I do have my roots there in Cleveland, Ohio. So we're connected in that way.
Small world, always interesting to find the common connections.
Now, what I do think is really cool is how you have figured out a synergistic combination of companies where you have the law firm on the one side and you have the product development and prototyping company on the other side where they feed each other clients. So basically, somebody comes to you, they've got an intellectual property issue, they don't necessarily have their prototype done yet, or they need help actually developing the product. So they're just an idea, and you provide the legal services, and you say, hey, by the way, let me introduce you to so and so at Mountain Green Engineering, where they can help you with actually making this, a reality. Somebody comes to the prototyping company for that reason, and then you find out that they're not protected legally, and you say, hey, let's provide you some legal protections and get you involved with Miller IP law. So I really like how you've found this 1-2 punch that kind of works off of each other, and it's really something that law firm owners who are listening to this should listen to carefully and think about, because there's a lot of lawyers that I run into that are not sure if a law practice is the business that they really wanted. Like, they wanted to be a lawyer, they became a lawyer, they wanted to do something for themselves to, create that dream and fulfill a passion or desire. And they kind of opened up a law practice because that's all that they knew. So first, you're an example of, hey, there's, you can be a business owner, it could be outside of law, and you don't necessarily have to give up law in the process. So that's one point that I'd like to make for our listeners from your journey and your example. And then the second is that you could be a multi-passionate person. You could have more than one desire, and it's okay. And it's okay to act on it, and it's possible to dance. They say in a Jewish saying for sure is that you can't dance at two weddings, but here, it's okay to dance at two businesses. You can figure out how that works. Actually, the founder of Twitter, CEO of Twitter, is also what's his other business? I'm drawing a blank right now, but he stationed the headquarters across the street from each other, and I'm going to kick myself later for forgetting what it was. But basically, he spends half of his time. Oh, it's Square, right? So yeah. Twitter and Square. So he basically just walks across the street to be from one business to the next, and that's a CEO of multi-million, or even I have no idea what the valuations are. So I'm not going to make believe I do. So let's say multi-million-dollar companies, and he's able to do it. So it's possible, and it's really just a question of really understanding what your desires are and what you're trying to achieve and accomplish to make that happen. So, Devin, really interesting that you've been able to pull this off and that you're succeeding at it. One question I have for you that I'm sure our listeners are going to be curious about is, what happened with the wearables company? Does it still exist? Is it something that you sold off or had to shut down? And kind of like, that's such an interesting part of your story, and we're left hanging wondering what happened to it.
Yeah, it just makes the story even more interesting. It's still alive in a different form or fashion. So it started out as hydration wearables business, and as we were kind of going through, we got to the prototype. We'd done some testing. We'd done, and I'm not going to drop the names because I don't know where I am with NDA, so I'm not going to. But we were with some of the bigger companies that do wearables, some of the bigger collegiate colleges and other teams and larger teams, and we're starting to do some testing and working with them. And we kind of got it to the point that we needed to go for the next round of investment, right? So you kind of have your seed series, and then you're going to go for your Series A or Series B. And so we've done our seed round. We've done well with that. And we're kind of now looking, okay, we need to go for the next series of fundraising. And kind of in the midst of that, of deciding, how we wanted to and what the approach was and what the next step was, and we want to do that. We had an opportunity that kind of came up to do a bit of a pivot for a company that was looking to do wearables for more of diabetes or for glucose monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what we've done with Halo Wearables, which is a hydration monitoring company, had a lot of this technology, and a lot of those things we were doing had very good overlaps with what they were doing. And so we ended up licensing what we were doing with Halo Wearables, the hydration company, to the to Tula, to the company that was wanting to do this startup with the diabetes monitoring. Story doesn't end there. So from there, I am still actively involved, and so I serve as in-house counsel for the now diabetes monitoring, as well as Mountain Green Engineering does a lot of their product development and their work on that. So in a different form or fashion, it continues on that with Miller IP and doing the legal practice. I continue to shepherd that along from the IP side, and then the engineering and the prototyping development side, Mountain Green Engineering. So that one, they're doing very well. Can't disclose too much as far as where they're at, but they're going to be launching in a pretty big way in the not very distant future. And so that one maybe is a follow up or circle back sometime.
Oh,
we'll have to catch back up once they actually launch and are a bit more public. But they continue to do very well, and it's a fun fun path to continue on in the road.
Yeah, so Devin, I'm going to share another nugget about my personal journey. So you don't know this. I'm certain you don't know this, but I have shared it here on the podcast. So my avid listeners are already aware, but I am also a paramedic. And I worked as a paramedic full time for a few years, but really all the time it was a hobby / passion of mine. So I still do it as just for the enjoyment of it. And I work one shift a week. I'm what they call a per diem medic. But in that field, one of the things that we run into a lot is in diabetic emergencies is patients who have hypoglycemia. So basically they've taken their insulin and forgot to eat, or they've taken too much insulin, they forgot they took it twice. Whatever the case is, they end up with their blood sugar being too low, which left that way, they could end up going into respiratory arrest and dying. And it's one of the things where we come in the field and we look like miracle workers because we give them a little bit of sugar and we wake them up from the dead. But what's interesting is that they have these insulin pumps that automatically inject insulin into the person that's wearing it for the people who have especially type 1 diabetes, so the people who are younger, to make it more comfortable for them. They're not getting shots all the time, and they're able to, as kids, they're able to stay on top of it because they don't have to remember this pump is doing it for them. So I can definitely see where this, glucose monitoring wearable would be extremely valuable for those people, because especially those people who are wearing those insulin pumps, where now those two can be tied together and make it completely automatic and not require any human interaction at all. So to me, I'm excited about it. But our listeners, unless they're diabetics, are probably less excited about that specific invention or topic. But it is very interesting to see how you can take it from an idea and run with it to a point where it's something that's providing a financial benefit, as well as a feather in your cap to be able to say, hey, look, I've built this business to this point, and whatever you end up doing with it, whether you sell it, hold on to your shares, wherever it takes you, it's a very interesting thing from the outside in to look and see your journey and see that happening. At this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to switch gears, because you are a unique guest in that you come very well educated, not just in law, but also in business, with an MBA from a really good school, better than the one that my MBA is from. And what's interesting about this is that one of the most common things for a law firm owner to say, whether they say it out loud or to themselves, is, how the heck am I supposed to know that? They didn't teach me business in law school. And it's just so common that that's one of my primary things that I'm trying to fight is, hey, you didn't need to learn this. You can learn it on the job. You can learn it on the fly. So understanding business in the way that you do, having been educated about it, and understanding running a law practice from your own experience of working for a practice as well as running your own practice, why don't you start off with giving us some pointers that a law firm owner listening to this might be able to take and run with for operating their business?
Yeah, that's a good kind of question or point to jump off on. I certainly get some of the things that you, even going through the MBA, and maybe I'll go that, is that you didn't necessarily think of when you jumped into running any company, whether it's a law firm or anything, is you have the excitement and you say, hey, I've run I've been part of a law practice for a long time. I've worked for a firm. I get how to manage clients and how to do keep them happy and how to do good work in that. And then you jump off and do your own firm and you're saying, well, I didn't realize I had to do payroll. I didn't realize I had to do taxes. Didn't realize I had to do marketing or I had to generate those new clients and how I had to do kind of all of those things outside of the law practice. And so I always used to joke, and I think there's some truth to it, that the lawyers are very good at giving legal advice and terrible about giving business advice, just because they're very focused and very niche in one thing without having or dived in or got experience on the other end. But I think, if you're looking saying, hey, how do I start to get that, whether it's get that education or get that experience, one is always getting a good mentor. It's always good. Part of what I've done and some of the business things, I've had people that I've worked with when I've done startups and been co-founders and other things that were very good at other parts of the aspect that I hadn't had as much experience with. So as an example, I worked with one startup that they were very good at marketing and sales. And so I took some of what they learned and gleaned that as I can kind of fold it into my tool chest. Another one is that, kind of some of the ones that I don't want to learn as much or become experienced as much, I don't really want to become a tax expert or a tax attorney or a CPA or any of those. So some of it is better to hire out for the areas that you don't know. And it doesn't mean you have to bring them into the firm or make them a partner. This means that some of the areas that you can, if you need help with payroll or taxes or that, you need to learn where your strengths are. If you're really good at client development and landing them, then focus your time on that and let the other people that are very good and experienced in other areas, let them do that. And same thing if it's marketing. If you're very good at website development and that's your passion, do it yourself. If you hate website development or don't have any idea, then that's one area that you can find other people that are very good in expertise. So it's kind of always been a balance for me of finding where my strengths are and where it makes sense to focus my time that's going to get the best return. And some of the other areas that need to be done, when I very first started getting things up and running, I did them because I didn't have the money to pay for people, or I didn't want to pay for them, or I was looking to save money there so I could put money elsewhere. But as you get your feet wet and feet underneath you, to bring more people on that have those areas of expertise, is sometimes I think people, lawyers don't want to admit defeat that they're not expert in all areas and they have a lot of education, and yet sometimes you're better to diversify and have other team members that can help you and support you on the different areas.
Yeah. So in the vein of bringing on help, whether it's contractors or hiring staff around that particular job skill, the biggest issue that people have is not just recognizing the need, but recognizing the value of that need. And it's as a firm owner, you're a business owner, an entrepreneur. We're a certain type of personality, and that personality type is I can do it myself. Right? We got to where we are because we felt that we could do better than wherever we were working. And that's how we created the business that we operate. And then we operate from that mantra even once we've outgrown our own britches per se. You're fully booked, you have no time, and you're still holding on to those mundane tasks and saying, oh, I can do it myself. And I think that is a key point and really important in this discussion. One of the One of the ways that I just heard recently on a podcast, and this was an interview that James Wedmore was doing of Michael Hyatt. Firm owners who are listening to this, you won't be familiar with James Wedmore. He's a coach of mine, but Michael Hyatt, you might be familiar with. He's got quite the audience. He has a podcast called. It started as "This Is Your Life," and now it is something else, and I'll look it up as I continue talking. So Michael Hyatt actually he talks about how when he first was analyzing how to choose whether to outsource something, for example, like web development. So he was talking to somebody. His podcast is Lead to Win, and it's a great show for anybody who's trying to be a leader. So definitely encourage you to check it out. But this is a great way of looking at it from the other perspective when you're trying to figure out whether to hire somebody. So a friend of his was trying to figure out whether to hire a web developer for their website, and he says, why should I hire somebody to do it? I can do it myself, and I can save the money. And he turned around to him and he said, okay, let's calculate what your time is worth. Let's just look at what your total revenue is for the year and then how many hours you're working and just do the simple math. What's your hourly rate? And they figured out it was $125 an hour. And he said, okay, your time is worth $125 an hour. So let me ask you a question. Would you hire a web developer for your website at $125 an hour? And when I looked at it that way, he said, no, of course not, because I can get a really good web developer for $30 an hour. So why would I pay $125? And as soon as you start thinking of it that way, then you're like, oh, wait a second, what the heck am I doing? So there's a combination and a very fine line of figuring out. It's not just the dollar amount. It's not just what's it worth. It's also, is this something I enjoy doing? Is this something I want to do? If doing web development lights you up, then maybe you should spend some of your time web developing, but it might not be the right thing to do it for your law practice. Maybe you should do it as a hobby and do it for other clients and still bring a web developer on for yourself. But a very interesting point that you made, that you've learned over time to bring on the right support and the right help to get things done, or sometimes do it yourself. So how do you decide whether to do things yourself, Devin?
Yeah, and I'm just a little bit smiling because you kind of go through that story, and it certainly reflects a lot of where I've gone through. Because I still think I could do things a lot better than sometimes other people could do, and I still want to do them myself. And to your point, there's kind of that entrepreneur bent of, hey, I can do this, and I'll just keep doing it myself. And then either you work 24 hours a day and never sleep, or you get so burned out that you can't keep continuing on. So this kind of certainly gave me kind of flashbacks of where I've been in that. I looked at it as kind of a couple things. One is, if it's things that I don't like, those are easy enough. It means if it's not going to be a good return on my time, and I can do other things that are going to give a better return on my time, and I don't want to do them, then why am I spending my time doing them anyway? I'd rather bring somebody on that's their passion, because they're going to do a better job, and they're going to do it, more excitedly, and they're going to build things better in that area of the business than I will. So those are always the easiest ones for me to pick off and saying, let's find someone else that my passion is law, my passion is product development, my passion is engineering, my passion is not taxes or payroll. Let somebody else do that. And so that one's easy. I think the harder one gets into it is when you have ones that you do enjoy, that they are passionate about, and yet you still don't have enough time to do it. And those are the ones that either because you're, sometimes anal retentive enough that you want it done your way, and you want it to be done a specific way, that it's so hard to, because you're passionate about it, to hand it off to somebody else, and yet you don't have enough time to do it all. And so I always look at it kind of as, what are the ones that I'm the most passionate or enjoy the most, I try and keep for myself. And the ones that I still want done a certain way, I still end up handing those off to say, a little bit kind of your story of, okay, I only have so many hours in the day. I also am a family man. I also want to be there for my kids. I want to coach their soccer games. And every time that I keep one of those projects to myself that I, really shouldn't, I'm stealing time from somewhere else. And, time, if I steal time from one place, it has to be made up in the other. And so I look at it as, where is my time best spent? Where are my talents the best at? And that's where I'm going to focus it on. If it's not for me, it's developing clients, it's doing prototypes, it's doing product development, it's doing patents, it's doing trademark. And those are the things I really, one, enjoy, and two, think that I'm the best at. And so those are the things I focus my time. And then I start to say, okay, everything else. Now, how can I start to hire or get those experts or hire them on or contract it out or whatever the case may be in order to start to offload that. And it's one that is, you have to go through the process of doing it a few times to figure out how to hand it off, how much rope to give the people, and how much length or how much responsibility can they take. For me, it's usually I start out slow and I bring someone on, say, I need to offload this, start doing this job. If you do it well, then I give you more rope. If you don't, then I start to rein it back in and handle it myself. And it's a little bit of hit or miss, or taking several different steps to see how I can hand it off and who I can hand it off to and how that works. So it's not a hard question because it's every entrepreneur wants to keep it all to themselves. And yet if you want to grow, you can't grow with one person.
Absolutely, Devin. There's a couple of things that you said in there that I want to go back and touch on, so hopefully I remember them. But on the tail end of it, you talked about being able to slowly give that rope and allow them, with success to take on more. And that's really what I encourage my clients to do when they're team building, because there's one of two things that happens when you bring on a team member or a consultant to do something. The first is you tell them, hey, I need this done. You hand it off and don't look back. And the second is you are afraid to let go, and therefore you end up sitting there and micromanaging them and really killing their creativity and their ability to feel empowered and able to produce something on their own, and they feel the lack of trust. So those are really the two ways that people typically would do it without any sort of outside influence or coaching from myself or listening to this podcast and hearing you talk about it. And both of those are not good options. Handing it off without any oversight just means that you're going to end up disappointed in the end, because you're going to get a product that was not what you were expecting or not up to the quality that you want. And if you don't even look at it at that point, then your customer ends up suffering, or your sales and marketing campaign ends up suffering. Whatever that thing is that you're working on, it ends up not doing what you expected because you haven't been on top of it and overseeing it. So you definitely do need oversight. And then micromanaging is also not healthy, not for you and not for the person that's getting that task or that project. So there is this fine line in between, and how do you navigate that fine line? And Devin, you hit the nail on the head, which is you start off by giving them something small, something that's not significant enough for you that if they screw it up, it doesn't hurt you in a big way. And when they successfully do that and demonstrate to you that they have the capability of completing it and completing it well, then you hand them the next thing. And it's building trust. And when I bring on a new employee here, I tell them that that's what I'm doing. I tell them, look, you're getting a little piece at a time, because I need to build that trust. I need to know that when I hand this to you, it'll be done on time, meeting the objectives. The other thing is that when you start to hold on to it and say, hey, this is something I could do better by myself, what I challenge you to do is to think about what is the list of things that you're judging the quality on that you think you can do a better job at, and really get crystal clear on that and actually make it into a list. And now when you go to hand it off, give that list to the person that's receiving it and say, hey, look, I'm a perfectionist, or I expect to have the quality of work be at least what I would do on my own. And here's a list of the things that I would expect to have happen. And this way they've got this quality control list to go against and say, okay, have I done this? Have I met this objective? And you're much more likely to get back what you're expecting by doing that. And then going back to earlier in the conversation, you made a point about the fact that you're a family man and, you want to coach soccer. And first of all, I really resonate with that. My number one core value is family. Our mission statement here is to empower all people with wealth creation so that this and future generations can lead a better life. We myself in particular, very passionate about spending time with family. I'm building my business in a way that I can be there for my kids when they're around, and trying to get my work done when they're in school, when they're not present, so I can be fully present when they're here. So it really resonated with me when you shared that. But what I want to share with the audience is that understand that when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So when you start to recognize that saying no to doing that and actually giving it to somebody else, or choosing not to do it at all, is not saying no to it. It's saying yes to something else that's more important to you. And we need to really do a good job of figuring out what is important to us and be able to navigate that yes no minefield and be able to say no to the right things and yes to the right things. So really, really cool and valuable stuff here, Devin, that you're sharing. I'm going to switch gears and ask you a question on something specific, and that's in marketing your law firm. There's so many different ways to market a law firm. I would venture to say that there are thousands of different ways to market your law firm, if not more, and that can be a very confusing thing for law firm owners to try to navigate and figure out, how do I market my firm? My question to you is, if you're comfortable sharing how you do your marketing, great. But how did you arrive at the decision of marketing your firm the way that you do? And what would you recommend to a firm owner who's listening to this, who's sitting there and is not doing any marketing right now? Everything is coming through referrals, and they know that they need to do something, but they're trying to figure out what to do. Any tips that you have for them on what the first steps they can take to try to figure out this minefield and actually start working in a direction?
Sure. And as soon as I figure out the perfect marketing plan, I'll give that to you. I'll make my millions that way, because I don't know that there's one right answer. So it's probably it seems like a little bit, it's a process to figure out what works well for myself, for the firm, and kind of the niche we're at. And so I'm sure kind of every law firm and every firm has a different personality. So kind of backing up, and I'll certainly jump to your question, but backing up, when I was looking at kind of how I was going to go about marketing, I first said, well, what makes me different, or what do I want to be different on, or what can I promote as being different than the other? Because there are a lot of law firms out there. Even I'm in Utah, and there are a lot of intellectual property firms. And so it's like, okay, there are a lot of them. A lot of them have very talented attorneys. A lot of them do a very good job. How do I compete against that? I don't have the money that the huge law firm and downtown that's in the high rise does. And so where do I go? And so I started to back it up and say, okay, where do I want to focus the firm on, or why am I not just with that bigger firm, or what makes me different? So I kind of came at it as, okay, well, one thing is I like to work with startups and small businesses, which, that sounds like, okay, that's kind of a no-brainer, because, small startups and small businesses, law firms or patents, they're going to want patents and trademarks. But when I started to dive into it, it's like, okay, well, the startups and small businesses, typically the larger law firms turn them away. They want the big whales. They want the big clients. They're going to have millions of dollars of outward billings a year. And more often than not, they turn away, or they're not very supportive of the small businesses or the startups. And so I said, okay, that's where I kind of want to, both because I enjoy it, I've been through it, and that's where I want to focus on what I did, or where I was at. So then I started to say, okay, if I'm going to go after the small startups, the businesses, the solo, inventors, and those type of people, where are they at? Where are they going to be? And so I started to look at, not going to give away my whole plan, otherwise everybody will just copy what I'm doing. But I started to look and say, one of the things that has worked well for us, and I know it's a hit or miss for others, is we do a lot of radio ads, and we've hit success, and we've now tried different radio ads. Some resonate better with others. We're actually getting ready we have a couple different radio ads going. We're going to add a couple more to keep kind of iterating through what we find. But radio ads has been a good one. But that one we found is for not an older audience in the sense that they're retired, but farther along in their career. And so we found that for people that are, 45, 50, 55, they listen to the radio, and that's kind of where they're at. Now, when I wanted to say, okay, but I also want to go after the younger generation, or the, up and coming kind of startups, or people that are in that, and they're moving more towards podcasts. They're moving more towards blogs. They're moving more towards YouTube. They're moving more towards social media. And so it's kind of, I said, okay, for a given audience, it's the ones that are used to listening to radio and used to those type of ads. We're going to hit that. And for the younger generations, the smaller startups, the ones that are just getting out of school or just a few years in, or, that are excited and doing that, then we're going to hit a different. So it's kind of, we hit radio and some of those for the older audience. We're doing, podcasts, we're doing social media, we're doing some YouTube stuff, and some blog stuff. We have kind of a weekly newsletter that we send out, that we have different types of newsletters we send out to different people to kind of resonate with them. So, but it's a little bit, marketing is one that you have to find. For me, it was finding who I wanted to go after, what my niche was, and then doing that. And then it was trying to build on top of that. We did, one campaign, to give you an idea of what worked well for us with marketing, is that we started doing after hours, or what we do nights and weekends. And we found that a lot of startups and small businesses, people do that as a side hustle. They do that as do before work, after work. I do it on the weekends, anytime I have some extra time. But that doesn't really, it's not during their normal 9 to 5 job. And that's usually the only time law firms offer hours. And so we said, okay, if our niche and our people are really trying to help and support our startups, small businesses, and they're doing that between their 9 to 5 as they're trying to get it up and going, we need to make ourselves available to that kind of a time frame. Another thing we kind of thought of in marketing is we looked and saying, most law firms, they never offer discounts. They never offer anything sales or discounts or, for first-time inventors. So we started to say, hey, we got a lot of people that they're trying to decide as a small startup, as a small business, is this really worth the investment? Does this make sense? And how much of an investment is, and is it really going to work? So we offered for students and for first-time inventors a discount that they can get their feet wet. And we say, okay, most law firms don't really think of that because they're, again, going after the big whales, the big clients, and they're not looking for trying to help those. And so we kind of did that again different. So a lot of what's guided us is kind of who we want to help and how we want to help them. And then we found the channels that work best for us to kind of promote that out.
Awesome. And what I heard from your answer is that, and this kind of bleeds into the sales process, is that even once you're bringing the leads in through the door through your marketing campaign, you're continually looking at the people that are coming in and what their objections are, and what they're doing to say yes or no, to try to figure out how can I improve that to make them closer to a yes, because that's what the after hours, the discount, all of that is to get them to actually come to the table and to close on a sale of, to become a client of yours. So talking about the marketing and the sales process combined, how important is it to have a system around that? And what do you do to make sure that you're not letting leads fall through the cracks and staying on top of all the leads that come into your firm?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, to your point, you do oftentimes you focus a lot on the marketing, right? We got to get the name out there. We got to get the word out there, and we'll generate a whole bunch of people that will come in the door. And then my experience was, as I worked for, again, a large law firm for a while there, and they would have a lot of people come in through the door, and if they kind of signed the contract or opened the matter, got things going, great. We onboarded them, we got them going. And for all those that were on the fence or trying to decide, or hey, I need a month or two to get my funds together, anything else, more often than not, they fell through the cracks and they never heard from us again. And I always kind of thought to myself, hey, we're doing all this work to reach out to people, and that's the hard thing, is even find the people that are interested. And then half of the people or more we're letting slip through the cracks. And so we have, not going to give away all the secrets as to what system we use, but we have a system where we keep track of all of the people that come through the door, both those that are, kind of what we call a cold lead, or kind of interested, but not right now. Those that are saying, not today, but I am very interested. In a month or two, I really expect to have my funds together. Or as if it's a startup and they're saying, hey, I'm going through my seed round, and as soon as I close my seed round, I really do want to get going on this. And I kind of put those in the warm leads, and then the ones that are saying, hey, yeah, let's get going, I put those in. And then we have, what we would, or kind of a sequence of, okay, for each of those, when are we going to reach back out? For the cold lead, we may reach back out in a month and say, hey, just checking in, see how things are going. We also have built into our system, we're going to call people at a certain period as well. So one thing I guess, millennial generation or younger generation love texting, love emails, but they typically scared to get on the phone, and yet that's one of the best places to make that personal connection to kind of close a sale, but even more than just trying to close a sale, is really to make that connection to where they get that personal type of a feeling. And so we have kind of built in, when do we email, when do we call? For a cold lead, we do it every so often. For a warm lead, they said, hey, reach back out to me in 2 weeks. I make sure to reach back out to them in 2 weeks. For the ones that want to get going, that they open the matter today, I still follow up in a week just to say, hey, we're happy to have you on board. Thanks for being a client of ours. Just wanted to check in and see if you had any questions, if there's anything that came up after we got you onboarded. And, we kind of have those sequences set up so that each time we have somebody for any of those different types of places, that we've done a whole bunch of work to get them to even recognize our name, to get interest, that we're going to make sure to follow up and continue to do that. So that's one of the things we set up. One of the other things that I like, or maybe it's my personal kind of passion, is we do a newsletter that is kind of a useful way for them to learn intellectual property. So we send it out. It's more from a business perspective, but it's kind of, if I were in the business's shoes, what would I need to know about trademarks or patents or whatever the case may be for that newsletter? It's kind of one way where I can nicely reach out, help them to educate, to learn, to better understand things, as well as just kind of provide that touch point of, hey, here, just as a reminder, we're still out here, we're still happy to help, and we're here whenever you're ready to go. Low pressure, not trying to sell you, but just trying to remind you kind of we're there. So that's kind of the main thing, a lot of the things that we do to kind of, after we do that initial marketing, to then convert it over to sales.
And who in your firm is having the sales conversation?
Usually I like to do it with an attorney. I know it's more, I know a lot of law firms don't like that because attorney's time is more expensive, right? You can hire a secretary, you can hire someone else that, I can pay, $15, $20 an hour and do that. But if I'm trying to establish a relationship with the client, I want that to be with the attorney, because that's who's going to be doing the work. That's who's going to be the most knowledgeable. It makes the client, or the potential client feel like I'm not just trying to hurry and close a deal, but it is and genuinely is trying to help them out and to understand that what they need to do as a business, or how we can help them, how we can do whatever whatever their needs are. And the attorney is the one. So we typically, both on who answers the initial phone calls, if it's a client or a potential client calls in, to who does the outreach, or by and large, for most circumstances, it's going to be the attorney, because I always call, we have, I work with some of the clients I do, and I mentioned the diabetes monitoring. They have, for the healthcare industry, kind of a customer care representative, a dedicated representative that knows their file, knows their case, knows who they are, knows their medical history and all those things. Well, in a large sense, we do that with the law practice as well. We have an attorney. He knows who you are. He's been with you since the beginning. He knows where your business is at, that you're trying to do a seed round, or that you just closed the seed round, and great, now you're on to the next round, and knows that and through the process. And establishing that relationship earlier, to me, makes the investment of paying the higher attorney time for that direct interaction worthwhile.
Yeah, and the truth is that I don't have judgment on either side of the fence. So it's very interesting to hear your arguments for having the associate or having an attorney do these sales conversations. Personally, I try to push my clients as they're getting larger to bring a salesperson in-house to have those conversations. I have a lot of pushback from some of my clients who feel that in the sales conversation, there's the potential for legal advice to be shared, and that has to be coming from an attorney. But my argument is that we need to separate that. You really shouldn't be giving legal advice in that initial conversation anyway. They should be paying for any legal advice that they're getting. And that initial call should be selling them into a consultation that they can pay for. And then from there, and again, this is my opinion on what should work best for a firm from a business perspective. Every firm is different, and how you feel about it, and firm owners are, you own the firm, you get to make the decisions that you want. But I believe that there's a lot of power in closing them on a very, very small sale up front. So you sell them on a consultation that's inexpensive, but now the attorney's time is paid for it. Now they're talking to the attorney. They get their legal advice. The attorney sells them into the larger matter, and then you can give them a discount of that initial consultation. If you wanted to offer a free consultation, it's now a selling tool to say, hey, you've already spent money with us. We're going to give it to you as a credit, for going with us. And now they kind of feel like, oh, if I go to somebody else, I'm going to have to pay this much more. So it helps even in the sales process with closing the sale. But I'm a big fan of getting the initial sale done by a salesperson and then moving to the attorney once they're already paying, so that the attorney is not spending any time with somebody who's a no. But that's my opinion, and what's working for you is working for you, and it's really good. I mean, that's why I have you here, to share what's working for you, because firm owners should know that you can do whatever you want. And Devin is having a lot of success with his attorneys having that sale conversation. So if you're struggling with trying to figure out what you should be doing, you can try whatever you want. You can choose whatever feels best to you, easiest to you, and just run with it. And the key is, as a business person, your job is to measure, keep track of the metrics, understand what's happening, and then always be open and ready to test to see if something else might work better.
Yeah, and
Go
I
ahead,
have
Devin.
one thought kind of on that as you popped up. One thing, to your point, everything is different. One thing that I did like, as taking some of those calls, is it gave me, as an attorney, a better idea of what things that clients were struggling with or didn't like, or things that I could fix on the firm side. So give you an example, clients, for a previous firm that I worked at, they were getting inundated with emails, meaning they would give, attorneys, we try and always, cover ourselves and make sure that we're not liable. And we want to make sure they know everything that's possible, so that if they ever have any questions, we have it well documented. But on the business side, they're saying, I'm getting emails, once, twice a day, 5 times a week, and everything else. And I don't even know which ones to respond to, or how to respond to them, or what's being asked of me, or anything else. And, a salesperson would have taken that as one perspective, but it wasn't getting trickled back the way that it should have, so that you can make that correction as, the company leadership, and as they're doing that. So sometimes for me, it's been helpful to have that closer connection, because it helps me to know what the clients do or don't like, and then gives me cues on to how to improve.
Absolutely. This great feedback and great information. Thanks, Devin, for that. So to recap, you can choose whatever marketing works best for you, but the key is to know who your target customer is, and to try to find them where they are and market there. For a sales process, make sure that you have a process in place. Make sure you have a way to keep leads from falling through the cracks. If you close somebody on the front end, obviously you have a way of bringing them into the firm and serving them. If somebody's a no, obviously they're done. You're not going to bother wasting time with them moving forward. It's those people in between who are not a yes on the first call and are not a no that tend to get lost in the shuffle, and you really need to have a system to keep on top and stay on top with them. As far as who's having the sales conversations, it could be an attorney in the firm. Devin has made some really good points as to why you might want that to be the case, including that you can they can establish a relationship with the client. B, they can once they know the client, they can continue that conversation. The rest of any sales process moving forward is very natural, because they have that long-term relationship with the client. And then finally, in that sales process, you could find out what clients are struggling with and how you can implement that on the firm side to make your firm better. That's all wonderful stuff. And Devin, I wish we had enough time to dive even further in, but we managed to get through nearly an hour just scratching the surface here. I wanted to talk to you about the financial side of the firm, how, as a firm owner who is business minded, how you operate the financials. I also wanted to talk to you about team building and leadership. So I guess we're going to have to try to get you back on the podcast at some point to cover some of those things. It's been fun. It's been a really good conversation, and I really appreciate you being here. I do want to give you an opportunity to share with our listeners how they can get in touch with you, how they can send business your way, what can they do as a next step if they liked you and they want to know more about your journey, or how they can support you.
Sure. Yeah, there were a few ways to reach out. I mean, certainly if you're just wanting to kind of get to know us and check us out a little bit more, you can go to our website, which is Miller, so just Miller for Miller IP Law, and then the last letter is IPL.com. So MillerIPL.com. It's IP and then L for law. That's an easy way to reach out to us. On the website, it actually connects you with an attorney that you can live chat with as well. So that's a good way to do that. They're welcome to email me. My direct email is Devin, so DEVIN, and then at MillerIPL.com. Or they can just give me a call. I answer calls all the time with clients. I love to talk with them. So if they want to give me a call, they can call me at 801-829-8446. So I always say I'm pretty available about any way that people want to reach out, and I'm always happy to chat. We always offer a free strategy session so that people can kind of ask the questions to see whether or not they need to engage us, and we'll give you an honest answer. Sometimes it doesn't make sense for us to work with them or to help them because they're not there yet. And other times it certainly makes sense. So any way you reach out, we always schedule an introductory meeting so that we can sit down and kind of strategize with you.
Wow, that's awesome, Devin. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and being upfront and open with us here on the podcast. I am sure that the listeners are going to take a lot out of the information that you shared, and I really love your story, especially since we're so deeply connected there in Cleveland, Ohio, where our paths have crossed many years apart from each other. But Devin, I enjoyed my time with you, and it was a pleasure meeting you face-to-face. Those of you listening to this are wondering what's going on. I'm recording this on video as well, so I'm looking at Devin. You're just listening to us, but I do appreciate you being here on the show, and thank you so much, and maybe we'll have you back. We'll see.
My pleasure. Always happy to be back, and it was a pleasure to talk with you as well.
All right. So take care, everybody. That's a wrap for us here on the Profit with Law podcast. Until next time, keep your firms efficient, profitable, growing, and let's make a change and impact on the world. That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.